I have literally never heard of this. This looks so high-end and nice. I thought we would take a look at this YouTube video. This is the channel, Best Indie Games. It's talking about the real-time strategy games that are coming out in 2024. I kind of clicked through this a little bit. I haven't watched the whole thing. Some of these I don't recognize at all. But I figure with so much doom and gloom about, RTS in general, I thought we could look at some stuff that is coming out, see what might be worth playing on this channel. Let's take a look.
Hello Indie Game fans, real-time strategy games are back. Following somewhat of a renaissance from games like the Command & Conquer Remaster, Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition, and even indie mega hits like They Are Billions, developers are once again trying their luck with this genre, with both innovative new ideas and tributes such as War Chief, a game that looks to be very Warcraft 3 in terms of theme and look, as well as factions and units available, but appears to be scaling back on the base building elements, although bases and structures are still a thing in this game. Also different here is that you're able to summon units instantly on the battlefield, which must be driven by an economic engine on the back end, looking kind of neat and is supposed to be a free-to-play title, so I am curious.
That looks good. It's good to hear it's free to play. That looks good. They need to get some more Warcraft stuff back. I feel like Warcraft did so much for RTS and it doesn't get, its legacy doesn't get a fair shake. I mean, they got boned with Reforged, and then it just doesn't seem like people are really exploring this type of game again, so I would welcome something like this.
Is about the monetization.
at war.
This one's here for the lols, since the Toho Empires is another title that is based on characters from the Toho project, but rather than the very common shoot 'em up, roguelite or platformer variants, this is straight up a full RTS title instead, where I don't believe there's
You feel like Stormgate is more Warcraft than anything else? I'm talking about like full-on, like heroes that level up, like creeps that give you items, stuff like that when I say Warcraft.
another Toho game in this genre, which makes it a first.
I don't know what to make of this one.
More importantly though, is that this game initially had cover art that looked like this, but the cowards have changed it back to the regular anime girl versions of the characters, which does make it more generic, but the in-game look remains the same, although it is still subject to change. There's full base building and resource gathering, as well as different factions.
It does seem like they have formation set up in this.
Interesting, along with the rock paper scissors type of counters for each type of units, from cavalry to archers and magical grimoires, also having 40 named characters from the franchise, where you can activate their unique spell cards at critical junctures. There's a full story campaign as well, with over 30 stages, as well as online support for up to 6 players, looking kind of awesome and is so indie games. I last covered Liquidation back in October 2021, and it is still not out, but the developers have been posting to Twitter, so I assume it is still in development. This game has both sci-fi and fantasy elements, with the world and character designs more resembling the Warhammer 40k universe, and I'm not complaining since Dawn of War is great, but seems to have a little bit
I'm having a hard time understanding. Do you just follow the units from behind, or is this supposed to be cinematic?
StarCraft as well. Cover, terrain, and elevation will factor into the combat effectiveness of your units, also having commander hero characters and looks promising. Here's an interesting RTS with branching campaigns, where in Modu War, you play as a shape-shifting alien creature named Modu, who is able to grow different organs and parts, as well as split and merge them however you see fit.
Dude, that's really interesting. There's so much untapped potential with RTS. I've never even thought of something like this.
Using the disparate parts of the creature in order to accomplish your mission. Where it gets interesting is that the alien has been subjugated by the ERE, or Earth Repatriation Expedition, a hostile force that are essentially humans, so you can choose either to fight for or against them. So the campaign portion of the game sure looks to be interesting, with the growth of your creature being an alternative take on resource gathering and producing units. Here's another entry with some
Yeah, that last game, that's a really novel concept. I'm curious how that comes out. Looks pretty indie. Not that indie's necessarily bad, but I'm curious to see what the final version's going to be like, because that's a very different concept.
Billion's DNA titled Warana, a defense title in which you're facing off against thousands and thousands of enemies, but can construct walls and towers as well as summon an army in order to survive.
This looks really good. I like the kind of ogre battle-esque graphics. If you guys haven't played They Are Billions, by the way, you are missing out. That is one of the most fun single-player experiences I've had in any RTS game. Like, it's really, really good.
This has a deck building twist in which you're drawing these cards from a deck and playing them at critical moments in time to summon buildings, units, and cast powerful spells. Apparently, this has a multiplayer battle royale component for 30 players, essentially seeing who is the last man standing, so you're playing defense on your own map, but then switch to offense against other players. But I hope the single player mode is robust enough, and maybe they might have the Super Autopets style.
Yeah, there's a lot that you can do with just this ridiculous number of waves of units coming to hit you. I think They Are Billions did that so well. It's so sick.
Trick multiplayer in which your opponents are actual builds that other players have created in the past.
Whoa, this one looks really nice. Is this
An
in-game?
impressive looking diesel punk RTS title is Written Right, one that is set in a period in which the technology looks similar to World War II level, but it's a fictional fantasy world filled with anthropomorphic animals, with rats, mice, lizards, and monitor lizards battling for supremacy. From the theme, it sure looks to be inspired by the Company of Heroes games, in which I don't believe there are any base building or resource gathering elements, but rather it is focused on tactics and strategy in combat. It takes place across 3 continents, each of which present their own hazards and challenges.
This is the Artosis mouse.
Such as the central continent with heavily fortified military bases, the eastern continent with marshes and swamps that slow down troop movement, and the desert continent with little to no cover that is more suitable for vehicles over infantry. Each unit can be customized and upgraded, with there being
This
physics
looks really
destruction
good.
of
Damn, look at
buildings
the
and
ragdolling
objects
on the units.
battlefield, and looks like a very impressive title.
I have literally never heard of this. This looks so high-end and nice. I never really got into these kind of military-style games. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but like where you just control like a couple of units, and it's a little bit more like a puzzle and a micro-battler. This looks cool, though. I've never heard of this before, by the way. Is this Dune?
We're going old school with this one since Barkhan sure looks like Dune, with it being set in a sand planet and does have giant sand snakes featuring prominently in the trailer and artwork, going back to Dune 2, which many have attributed to the boom of the modern RTS, well, as modern as it could have been in 1992, with this title looking quite impressive as well. There are 3 factions in this game battling over control of rare minerals, although they are rather uninspiringly named the Clan of Power, Will, and Trickery respectively, with each having different traits and specialities, such as heavy armored vehicles, fast and precise units for hit-and-run attacks, as well as one with a focus on stealth. And if you do love Dune, do note that there is an official Dune 4X RTS title named Dune Spice Wars, which is pretty good as well.
I never played Dune Spice Wars.
I was surprised to see Man of War 2 pop up on the radar, since the original Man of War was one of the first indie games that I got through Humble Bundle all those many years ago, since that was a 2009 release. So 15 years later, the series is back. It is a World War II title, this time focusing on the eastern and western fronts, with historically accurate units as one of the main draws, and frankly, it looks very good for an RTS in 2024. There's no base building in this game, being a tactics and strategy focused title first, with the added twist being direct control, in which you can take control of any single unit on the battlefield, turning it into more of a third-person action game, which is interesting. It has a story campaign from both the perspective of the Allies and Soviets as they battle the Third Reich, and also has PvP and co-op multiplayer support, and looks like one for World War II game buffs. Indie game fans will be familiar with the Creeper World series, games which started on Flash but have made their way to Steam, with Creeper World 3 being great for the more classic top-down experience, and Creeper World 4 taking the jump to 3D, which surprisingly worked as they simulated the Creeper with liquid physics, and now Creeper World IXE or X is changing things up again, now having the side-scrolling perspective.
This looks like a bullet hell game, I'm confused.
Effectively a real-time strategy game. You are commanding ships to fire at the creeper to contain and then destroy it, with the added fun of particle physics in this game making it more interesting. You literally have never seen a Creeper World game like this before, so long-time fans of the series, you know what to do.
More of a top-down game.
Another entry in the survival defense RTS subgenre popularized by They Are Billions is From Glory to Goo, in which you play as human colonists attempting to build a base of operations on an alien planet, but are then assaulted by the shape-shifting alien force known as the Goo. However, unlike Creeper World mentioned earlier, this goo is not some faceless blob or organic mass, but rather can be shaped into all sorts of units, with the swarms of them certainly reminding me of the zombies from They Are Billions. There appears to be light factory building elements as well, since I see conveyor belts in the trailer, and while not the most beautiful looking pixel art, I suppose the art style does work for this game.
Ooh, look at that. I kinda dig it, actually, the pixel art.
Here's another impressive looking title that might be taking cues from Supreme Commander in Sanctuary Shattered Sun, where the gimmick is of course large-scale battles that involve hundreds upon hundreds of units, and has been christened as such by the original developers of that game. It's a game that focuses on macro rather than micro, so you won't be seeing small-scale skirmishes between units like in Warcraft, but rather huge armies just slamming into one another, but with ambitious new elements like super weapons with the power to literally break the map and to send enemies tumbling into the sun. There is physics simulation of projectiles and even weather control on a massive scale, giving you the ability to freeze
this game
entire
does look really
oceans
pretty.
and to drive your army over
I don't know if
it,
this one's
for
up my
example,
alley as much,
looking
but
very
you
ambitious,
can't
and
deny
I
this
hope
does look
lives up
pretty
to
cool.
the hype.
This released, I think, 3 weeks ago.
Just a quick one here, since I've covered Godsworn quite recently, being a mythological RTS with...
I've heard of this. Was Grubby streaming this, or was somebody streaming this recently? I can't remember. Yeah.
all the classic elements, including base building and resource gathering, along with hero units and a story campaign, telling the tale of the Northern Crusades, of pagan gods and their followers fighting against crusaders and the armies of heaven. If you love games like Age of Mythology, I'm sure that you'll find something interesting here, only it has a more Nordic twist, so you'll be seeing creatures and monsters from that
This looks
mythology
sick. Maybe we should
rather
try
than
this one
Egyptian
out.
or Greek.
Has
One of
anybody
the main
played this? Was this one
resources
good, chat?
here, interestingly enough, is faith, which comes from the number of followers that you have, having a co-op campaign, but also competitive PvP skirmish mode, with the best part being that its early access release is on 28th March, so depending on when you're watching this, it should already be playable.
Did I ever play Black and White 2? I did play Black and White 1 when I was like in, maybe it's like 5th grade or something like that, a long time ago.
If you're anything like me, I'm sure that you'll go hell yes when the gimmick of this game is revealed later in the trailer, so keep on watching, in which it starts off slow and relatively peaceful, set in a vaguely medieval time period, and sees your units gathering resources and constructing buildings. We then get a glimpse of the fortification construction system that allows you to build walls and defenses, so maybe a stronghold-like title. And of course, walls are used to protect your base against invaders, which are the Danes in this case.
You get to play as Artosis. The Protosses are coming, siege your tanks!
But then, the hook here is that Dino Lords involves armored dinosaurs to both fight against and ride, adding in some action RPG style combat as well, and looks awesome.
Oh, we know this one.
Here's one of the best looking RTS titles, which is named Zero Space, a self-described cinematic real-time strategy game that adds on narrative RPG elements inspired by Mass Effect, as the choices you make will change the shape of the galaxy. They also talk
I think this
about
one's
a
back in,
limitless number of
beta right
combinations
now.
of factions, mercenaries, and heroes.
Check out their
which result
Patreon, by the way,
in every
chat.
battle being different, since you have 4 main factions with 10 units and 9 buildings each, 6 mercenary factions with 4 to 5 units each, and 14 different heroes to choose from. The main campaign also has story missions, side missions, and hero loyalty missions, so it looks to be a very ambitious title.
Yeah, I'm very
looks
excited
great,
for this one.
so I'll be eagerly keeping an eye on this.
Yeah, I just retweeted that tournament they've got.
On perhaps the opposite end of things from the previous title is Dorf Real-Time Strategic Conflict, a game that isn't as visually pretty, but instead is more of a throwback, in which you can definitely see elements of Command and Conquer.
Yeah, this is like a certain aesthetic that I kind of like. It gives me a lot of nostalgia. The kind of like DOS game RTS feel.
And more interestingly, Crush, Kill and Destroy, or KKND in this game. 2 out of the 3 factions look like analogs to GDI and Nod, with there being a harvester looking unit, but also allows infantry to garrison buildings like in Red Alert 2, and have nailed that throwback visual style.
Oh, this is like straight up Command & Conquer 1. Look at this.
Speaking of Command & Conquer, this is an indie game channel, so I wanted to give some smaller games a shout out, with Dying Breed looking like the original Command & Conquer or even Red Alert 1, absolutely nailing the art style. However, it does seem like there's only one faction to play as, which is the GDI analog.
Look at this,
in
this looks
world,
just
in which
like
you are
CNC.
taking on mutants, but does
They're getting
also
killed by
have
tremor
all the
worms.
classic base building elements, and might resemble more of the Ant campaign from Red Alert Counter-Strike with the PvE focus. Still, it looks sick and even has cheesy FMV and is definitely for fans of the genre. Here's one of the most visually impressive titles that I have come across, and yes, while it is very brown, grey and red, Dustfront RTS looks fantastic, having a larger global strategy map as you choose which mission to tackle and which
Sometimes when they
territory to
show
take.
these games, by the way, for anybody who's a game developer, it would help if you weren't circling everything over and over. I feel like sometimes people are trying to make things too cinematic. I would love to just look at it locked in place, like as the game is.
There is procedural generation, which results in variety, along with
Like
base
this.
building, a veterancy system, as well as
This
super
looks like
weapons that can
Artosis'
turn
mind.
entire cities into dust. So here's hoping we get more news soon.
That does look good.
This next title does not have a Steam page, so you might be wondering why it is up this high, and of course, the answer is that Industrial Annihilation comes to us from the developers of Planetary Annihilation, one of the best modern RTS series, and looks great, with the art style similarly carrying over into this new game. Also new here is that this has factory building elements in addition to RTS action, in which you are automating the production of entire units, looking like kind
Whoa.
of a lot, but awesome, and is supposed to be a 2024 release, so look out for the Steam page when it is done.
That looks crazy.
I cannot talk about RTS titles without mentioning Stormgate,
Yeah, we know
since
this
it comes
one.
to us from Frost Giant Studios that comprises of ex-Blizzard people who worked on StarCraft 2, and funnily enough, it looks like they have meshed StarCraft 2 together with Diablo for this new game, with an unannounced third faction, so I wonder what that could be. I remember this being big news back in 2020 when the studio was announced, and even after getting $35 million of funding, they recently concluded a Kickstarter which raised $2.3 million, with that campaign indicating a release in July 2024, with the concern of course being that it is free to play, but I suppose that's how you get players in this day and age, but monetization will be something to watch. Another bigger title that I absolutely love is Tempest Rising, essentially Command & Conquer in all but name, set on Earth after a nuclear war, with 3 factions vying for
I've heard of this
control,
one, I've never
each
seen
being
it.
asymmetric and having distinct units and even economy that you need to master. They have gotten the who's who of RTS games to be involved, including Frank Klepecki, who worked on the original CNC soundtrack and looks to be hitting all of those same notes, which I gladly welcome since EA is not doing anything with the IP.
Yeah,
For
EA's
turn-based
really stepped away from Command & Conquer. I would welcome a solid Command & Conquer. I felt like they never quite had the multiplayer down as well as the other games, like Blizzard RTSs. But a lot of cool stuff. Thank you so much for watching that. Let me know if there's a game you would like to see me play on my stream. If you ever want to join me on my Twitch stream, it's Tasteless TV. Yeah, leave a comment, like the video. Have a good day. Oh, there's a Tastosis shirt you can buy at my merch shop, tastelessthreads.com. Have a good one, and I hope to see you in a future video. Bye-bye.